He came home expecting the worst. Instead, he heard something from the dining room he'd never heard before: silence. When he walked in, his 4 wild sons were sitting together, holding hands, about to pray. He froze. In 3 years, he'd never seen anything like this. Richard James had everything, except the one thing that mattered: peace in his own home. 46 years old, billionaire, built an empire from nothing, but couldn't control 4 little boys. 3 years ago, his wife left, just walked out, left a note: "I can't do this." 4 baby boys, no mother, and a father drowning in grief he didn't know how to fix. Finn, Liam, Logan, Lucas, 6 years old now, angry, broken, fighting everyone who came near them. 22 nannies in 7 months. 22 trained professionals, every single one, quit. The boys would set traps, hide things, scream for hours, break whatever they could reach. They weren't bad kids, they were hurt kids, and hurt kids hurt people. The house was a battlefield, no joy, no laughter, just pain living in every corner. Then one day, a woman showed up, Susanna Taylor, 39, a housekeeper with no training, no experience with children, just a Bible and a quiet voice saying God told her to come. Richard didn't want to hire her, but something made him say yes. 3 days, he told her. She smiled. 3 days. The boys tested her, hard, but she didn't break, didn't run, just stayed. And on day 3, something happened that changed everything. Richard came home early. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then he heard voices, soft, coming from the dining room. He walked toward the sound, heart pounding. And what he saw when he stepped through that door, he'd remember it for the rest of his life. But before I show you what happened in that room, subscribe, like this video, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. This story will remind you that sometimes, when we've lost all hope, that's exactly when God shows up. Now let me take you inside that dining room. The morning started the way every morning started in the James house, with something breaking. Richard heard the crash from upstairs. Glass. Something expensive, probably. He didn't even get out of bed to check anymore. What was the point? 6:45 in the morning, and the war had already begun. He lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to his sons' voices rising, Finn giving orders, Liam's angry shout, Logan's footsteps running, Lucas starting to whine, which meant the screaming would come soon. This used to be the time Catherine would make coffee. She'd hum while she poured it, bring him a cup in bed, kiss his forehead, say something that made him smile. That was another life. Richard finally got up, got dressed, went downstairs. The kitchen looked like a tornado had passed through. Cereal everywhere, milk spilled on the counter, 4 bowls left wherever they'd been abandoned. The nanny, what was her name? Sarah, Susan, was already gone. Her resignation letter sat on the kitchen table next to the car keys she'd left behind. "I'm sorry, Mr. James. I tried. I really did. But I can't do this anymore. They need more help than I can give. Please don't contact me again." 22. That made 22. Richard folded the letter and put it in the drawer with the others. A drawer full of failure. A drawer full of people who'd looked at his sons and decided they weren't worth the trouble. He couldn't even be angry anymore. Just tired. So deeply, endlessly tired. The boys were in the living room. Finn sat on the couch like a little king, arms crossed, watching Richard with those calculating eyes. Liam was pacing, restless energy, looking for something to destroy. Logan had already disappeared somewhere under the stairs, probably, or in that crawl space behind the furnace. And Lucas sat in the corner, rocking slightly, that look on his face that meant he was about to lose it. "She's gone, isn't she?" Finn said. Not a question, a statement. Richard nodded. "Good," Finn said coldly. "She was mean anyway." "She wasn't mean, Finn. You put a frog in her bed." "It was just a frog. It was still alive." Finn shrugged. No remorse, no guilt. Just that blank look that scared Richard more than the anger did. This was what his sons had become. 4 little boys who'd learned that if you hurt people first, they can't hurt you when they leave. Richard's phone buzzed. A meeting in an hour. Another conference call. Another day of pretending he had his life together while everything at home fell apart. He looked at his sons, really looked at them. Finn, 6 years old, with Catherine's eyes and a heart that had frozen shut. Liam, with Richard's temper and no one to teach him how to control it. Logan, who'd rather hide than be seen because being seen meant being left eventually. And Lucas, the baby, who cried because he didn't have words for the pain yet. They were so small, so broken, and he didn't know how to fix them. "I have to go to work," Richard said quietly. "You always have to go to work," Liam shot back. "I know. I'm sorry." Sorry doesn't do anything. Richard felt that one hit, because Liam was right. Sorry didn't bring their mother back. Sorry didn't make the house feel like a home. Sorry didn't teach 4 boys how to be loved. He left them there and drove to his office in the city, made his calls, signed his papers, played the part of the man who had everything figured out. But the whole time, all he could think about was that drawer full of resignation letters, 22 women who couldn't handle his sons, 22 chances at hope that had died. By the time he got home that evening, Mr. Whitmore was waiting for him in the foyer. The man looked older than he had that morning. "Sir, we need to talk." Richard already knew. "She's not coming back." "No, sir. She left while you were gone. Didn't even pack her things. Just left." "Of course she did." "The agency called," Whitmore continued carefully. "They have one more person, but she's unconventional." Richard almost laughed. Unconventional. That was a nice way of saying desperate. "What's wrong with her?" "Nothing's wrong, sir. She's just not what we usually hire. She's been a housekeeper for years, no childcare training. She heard about your situation at her church and said she felt called to help." Called? There was that word again. Like God was paying house calls now. "What's her name?" "Susanna Taylor." Richard closed his eyes. He was so tired of hoping, so tired of trying, so tired of watching his sons destroy every person who walked through that door. But what choice did he have? "Send her." "Sir, are you sure? She's really not." "Send her, Whitmore. What's one more?" That night, Richard stood in his bedroom looking at an old photo, him and Catherine on their wedding day, her smile so bright it hurt to look at, his arm around her waist, both of them believing in forever. He didn't know when forever had become just 3 years. Downstairs, he could hear the boys still awake, still moving, still fighting whatever invisible enemy lived inside them. Tomorrow, another stranger would walk through that door, another person who would look at his sons and eventually decide they were too much. Richard set the photo down and got ready for bed. He didn't pray anymore, hadn't in a long time, but that night, staring at the dark ceiling, he whispered something that felt close. "Please, if anyone's listening, please. I don't know what else to do." Outside, the rain started falling again, and somewhere across town, a woman named Susanna was packing her bag, checking her Bible one more time, and getting ready to walk into a storm she'd been preparing for her whole life. Tuesday morning came grey and cold. Richard barely slept. When he did, he dreamed of Catherine walking out the door over and over, each time a little farther away until she disappeared completely. He got up before the boys, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window watching nothing. The agency had called last night to confirm. Susanna Taylor would arrive at 9. Richard checked his watch. 8:53. 7 minutes until another person walked in thinking they could save his family. 7 minutes until his sons proved them wrong. He heard footsteps behind him. Finn appeared in the doorway, already dressed, hair uncombed, eyes sharp. "Another one's coming today, isn't she?" Richard nodded. "What's this one's deal?" "She's different." "They're all different until they're the same." Finn walked past him and grabbed a juice box from the fridge. "How long you think this one lasts?" "I give her 2 days." "Finn." "I'm just being honest, Dad. Nobody stays." And before Richard could respond, Finn walked out. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 o'clock. Richard opened the door expecting he didn't even know what anymore. Maybe someone desperate enough to take the job. Maybe someone too naive to know what they were walking into. But the woman standing there wasn't what he expected. She was tall, black, maybe late 30s. Simple clothes, a white blouse and dark pants, both pressed carefully but worn soft from years of use. She carried one bag, one small, beat-up duffel, and a Bible that looked like it had been read so many times the cover was coming loose. But it was her face that stopped him. She wasn't smiling that fake, bright smile most nannies wore, wasn't trying to look confident or capable or any of the things people pretended to be in interviews. She just looked calm, like she'd already made peace with whatever was about to happen. "Mr. James?" Her voice was soft but steady. "Yes, you must be. Susanna Taylor, thank you for seeing me." Richard stepped aside to let her in, but she didn't move yet. She stood there on his doorstep, looking up at the house. Her eyes moved across the windows, the door, the stone steps, like she was taking it all in, really seeing it. Then she closed her eyes. Richard watched, confused, as her lips started moving. No sound, just movement. Her hand came up to rest over her heart. She was praying. Right there, on his doorstep, in front of him, in the cold morning air. Richard didn't know what to do, didn't know where to look. Nobody had ever done that before. After a long moment, Susanna opened her eyes and looked at him, really looked at him, not at his house or his money or his reputation, at him. "I'm ready now," she said quietly. She stepped inside. Richard led her to his office, offered her a seat, started to go through the usual speech, the one about his sons, the expectations, the difficulties. But Susanna spoke first. "Mr. James, before you tell me about the job, can I ask you something?" He paused. "Sure. What happened to their mother?" The question landed like a punch. Most people danced around it, made polite assumptions, avoided the topic entirely. "She left," Richard said flatly. 3 years ago, the boys were babies. She just left." Susanna nodded slowly. No judgment in her eyes, no pity either, just understanding. "And you've been carrying this alone since then?" It wasn't a question. Richard felt something crack in his chest. "I've tried everything, therapists, specialists, nannies with every degree you can imagine. Nothing works. My sons are—" He stopped, hating the words but needing to say them. "My sons are out of control. 22 people have quit in 7 months. I don't know what else to do." "Can I be honest with you?" Susanna asked gently. "Please. I don't think your sons are out of control. I think they're drowning. And drowning people fight hard against anyone trying to save them because they don't trust the hands reaching down." Richard stared at her. "There's a difference between fixing and healing, Mr. James. Fixing is about making things convenient for us. Healing is about making things whole for them. And whole takes time." "I'm offering 3 days," Richard said, "to see if you can handle them." Susanna smiled, but there was something sad in it. "I don't need 3 days to know whether I can handle them. I need 3 days to start earning their trust. There's a difference." Before Richard could respond, a crash came from upstairs. Loud, deliberate. Then Liam's voice. "Finn." Logan took my... Another crash. Lucas started screaming. Richard closed his eyes. "That's them." "I know," Susanna said. She stood up, smoothed her blouse, picked up her Bible. "Should we go meet them? You don't want to run away first?" She looked at him with those steady eyes. "Mr. James, I didn't come here to run. I came here to stay." And something about the way she said it made Richard actually believe her. They walked toward the noise together, toward the chaos, toward 4 boys who'd spent 3 years learning that everyone leaves. Susanna walked like she was heading towards something holy instead of something broken. And Richard, for the first time in a long time, felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. The playroom looked like a bomb had gone off. Toys scattered everywhere, books torn, curtains pulled down, a lamp overturned, crayon marks on the walls, spelling words Richard didn't want to read. And in the center of it all, 4 boys stood waiting. Finn in front, arms crossed, chin up, the general. Liam beside him, fists already clenched, the soldier. Logan half hidden behind an overturned chair, the ghost. Lucas at the back, taking that deep breath, the alarm. They'd done this 22 times before, stood in formation, showed the new person exactly what they were walking into, watched them try to hide their shock, watched them fail. Richard started to speak. "Boys, this is..." But Susanna walked past him. She stepped into the room slowly, not afraid, not angry, just present. She looked at the destruction, at the torn books, at the words on the wall, at the 4 small faces staring back at her with eyes that dared her to judge them. And then she smiled. Not a fake smile, not a nervous one, a real smile, warm, like she'd just walked into something beautiful instead of something broken. Finn's eyes narrowed. "What are you smiling at?" "At you for," Susanna said simply. "We're not cute," Liam snapped. "We're horrible. Everyone says so." Susanna tilted her head slightly. Then everyone must not be looking very closely. Lucas's breath hitched, the one he'd been holding for the scream, but Susanna did something then that stopped him. She knelt down. Right there on the messy floor, got down on her knees so she was at their level, eye to eye, equal. She looked at Finn first, really looked, like she could see past the crossed arms and the hard face to the scared boy underneath. Then Liam, past the anger. Then Logan, past the hiding. Then Lucas, past the scream he was holding in. "You are not too much," she said quietly. "You are not too broken, and you are not unlovable." The words hung in the air. Finn's arms dropped just a little. "You don't know us." "Not yet," Susanna agreed, "but I'd like to." Lucas opened his mouth. The scream was coming. Richard could see it. 6 hours of screaming. That's what happened when someone said something the boys didn't want to hear. But before the sound could come out, Susanna started humming. Low, gentle, an old song, the kind grandmothers sing, the kind that sounds like safety. She stood up slowly, still humming, and began picking up toys, one at a time. No rush, no urgency, just steady movement, and that soft, unafraid sound. Lucas's mouth stayed open, but no scream came. The boys stared. Nobody had ever hummed before. Susanna picked up a stuffed bear, set it gently on the shelf, picked up some blocks, stacked them carefully. "I think this room is messy," she said softly, still humming between words, "because your hearts are messy, and that's okay. Messy hearts just need time and love to get clean again." Liam's fists unclenched, just slightly. Logan took one step out from behind the chair. Finn stood frozen, watching her with something dangerous in his eyes, something that looked like hope trying to survive. Susanna kept picking up toys, kept humming, like she had all the time in the world, like she wasn't afraid of them, like she wasn't planning to leave. After a long moment, Lucas walked over to her, reached out with one small hand and touched the hem of her shirt, testing, seeing if she was real. Susanna looked down at him and smiled. "Hi, sweetheart." Lucas didn't answer, just held onto her shirt like it was an anchor. From the doorway, Richard watched something he'd never seen before. His sons were listening. Susanna turned to face all 4 of them. "We start fresh tomorrow," she said gently. "Tonight, you sleep in clean rooms. I'll help you tidy up if you want." "You'll help us?" Logan's voice was so quiet Richard almost missed it. "Of course," Susanna said. "That's what family does." "You're not family," Finn said, but his voice had lost its edge. "Not yet," Susanna said, "but maybe we will be." And then something impossible happened. The boys started picking up toys. Not because they were told to, not because they were afraid of punishment, just because someone had offered to help them instead of commanding them to do it alone. Richard leaned against the doorframe, his throat tight. 22 people had tried to control his sons. This woman was the first one who'd tried to understand them. That night, after the boys were in bed, Richard found Susanna in the small room they'd prepared for her. She was kneeling beside the bed, Bible open, lips moving in silent prayer. He started to back away, but she looked up. "They're good boys, Mr. James," she said softly. "They're just scared." "Scared of what?" "Loving someone who'll leave." Richard felt those words hit deep. "That's what I'm afraid of too." Susanna nodded. "I know, but fear doesn't heal anything. Only love does." She closed her Bible and looked at him with those calm eyes. "Get some rest, Mr. James. Tomorrow's a new day." Richard went to bed that night with something unfamiliar stirring in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to peace. Day 1 started before sunrise. Richard woke to a sound he hadn't heard in years, someone moving in the kitchen. Quiet, careful, not trying to wake anyone. He came downstairs and found Susanna at the stove, still in her simple clothes from yesterday, hair pulled back, humming that same soft song. She was making breakfast, not the fancy meals the chef used to prepare, just scrambled eggs, toast, simple things that smelled like home. "You're up early," Richard said. Susanna turned, smiled. "Old habit. My grandmother used to say, the morning is when you set the tone for the whole day." Richard watched her work. Steady hands, no wasted movement. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, just making food with care. One by one, the boys appeared. Finn first, suspicious, watching from the doorway. Then Liam, drawn by the smell. Logan peeked around the corner. Lucas came last, rubbing his eyes. Susanna didn't make a big deal of it, just kept humming, kept cooking, set 4 plates at the table like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Would you like to sit with me?" she asked. Not a command, an invitation. The boys looked at each other. This was a test too, just a different kind. Finn sat first, the others followed. Susanna placed food in front of each of them. Not fancy, not perfect, just warm and made with attention. They ate in silence for a while, watching her, waiting for her to change, to get angry, to show them who she really was. But she just ate her toast and smiled when Lucas dropped his fork. "Why are you being nice?" Finn finally asked. "You're just going to leave anyway." Susanna set down her coffee, looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm nice because that's who I am, and I'm not leaving today." "What about tomorrow?" "I'll be here tomorrow too." "You can't promise that," Finn said. "Nobody can." "You're right," Susanna said quietly. "I can't promise forever. I can only promise today, but I've never broken a promise yet." Liam stared at his plate. "Our mum promised too." The words hung there, heavy and painful. Susanna reached across the table, didn't touch him, just reached. "I'm not your mum, Liam. I'm just someone who showed up, and I'm choosing to stay, one day at a time." Something shifted in the room, small but real. The rest of the day, Richard watched from a distance. He watched Susanna straighten a family photo that had been knocked crooked. Watched her redirect Liam when he started to throw something. "Can you help me carry this instead?" Watched her sit outside Logan's hiding spot, waiting patiently until he came out on his own. Watched her let Lucas cry without trying to fix it, then offer him water when he was done. She didn't control them, she just met them where they were. That night, Richard sat in his office reviewing security footage, rewinding, watching her patience frame by frame. Who was this woman? Day 2 started differently. Richard left early for meetings. When he came back that afternoon, Mr. Whitmore met him at the door with an odd expression. "Sir, the boys, they did something." Richard's stomach dropped. What did they do? They tested her, set traps all over the house, water, toys on the stairs, the whole thing. And? Whitmore shook his head slowly, almost smiling. "You should see for yourself." Richard found Susanna in the hallway, soaking wet, her shirt dripping, hair plastered to her face. His heart sank. She was leaving. Of course she was leaving. But then she laughed. Clear, warm, real laughter. "Well," she said, wringing out her sleeve, "I guess it's raining indoors today." The boys stood frozen at the end of the hall, staring. They dumped a whole bucket of water on her head and she was laughing. Susanna walked forward, her feet landing on the toy cars they'd scattered, but instead of falling, she stepped carefully, gracefully, like she was dancing. She picked up the fake spider they'd hung, held it gently in her palm. "You know," she said softly, "even the things we're afraid of are usually just afraid themselves." She set the spider on a shelf, right next to a family photo. The boys didn't know what to do. Nobody had ever responded like this. That evening, after dinner, Richard heard small footsteps outside Susanna's door. He watched from the stairs as all 4 boys stood there, holding the empty bucket, the weapon they'd used against her. They were returning it. Finn knocked quietly. Susanna opened the door, saw them standing there, saw the bucket. "Thank you for trusting me with your test," she said gently. "Did I pass?" Finn looked at his brothers, then back at her. "You're still here. I told you I would be." Lucas reached out and took her hand. just held it. And Susanna, this woman who'd been drenched and tested and pushed, just smiled and squeezed back. Richard went to bed that night with a question burning in his mind. How long could she keep this up? How long before his sons broke her, like they'd broken everyone else? But somewhere deeper, underneath the fear, another question whispered, what if she doesn't break? Day 3. Richard had a presentation downtown. Important clients, millions on the line. But he couldn't focus. He sat in the back of the car, checking his phone. No calls from home, no emergencies. That should have been good news. But it made him nervous. 3 days. She'd lasted 3 days. That was longer than most. But the real test always came when they thought they'd won. When they relaxed. That's when his sons struck hardest. He made it through the morning, shook hands, signed papers, smiled at people who thought he had his life together. But by noon, he couldn't take it anymore. I need to go home, he told his driver. The whole drive back, his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He pulled into the driveway. The house looked quiet, too quiet. Richard's heart pounded as he opened the front door. Silence. Not the silence of destruction, not the silence of hiding. Just silence. Then he heard something. Voices, soft, coming from the dining room. He walked slowly down the hall, each step careful, like he was afraid of what he'd find. When he reached the doorway, he stopped, and what he saw broke something open inside him. His 4 sons were sitting at the dining room table, not fighting, not screaming, not destroying, just sitting. Susanna stood at the head of the table. She'd made lunch, simple food, sandwiches, soup, but the table was set carefully, napkins folded, glasses filled with water, and all 4 boys had their heads bowed, hands folded in their laps. Susanna's voice was gentle, clear. Thank you for this food, thank you for this home, and thank you for these 4 boys who are learning they don't have to be afraid anymore. Richard couldn't move. His throat closed up, his vision blurred. In 3 years, he'd never seen this, never seen his sons sit peacefully, never seen them bow their heads, never seen them look like Isafi, like a family. Tears started streaming down his face and he couldn't stop them. Susanna continued, her voice steady and warm. Thank you, that broken things can be made whole, that angry hearts can learn to be soft, that children who've been hurt can learn to trust again. Lucas lifted his head slightly and saw Richard standing there. Dad? His voice was small, concerned. Are you okay? Richard tried to answer but couldn't. His chest was too tight. The words wouldn't come. He just stood there, shaking, tears falling. All 4 boys were looking at him now, confused, maybe a little scared. Susanna looked up, her eyes met his, and in that moment she understood everything he couldn't say. She smiled, gently. Mr. James, would you like to join us? Richard nodded, managed to move his feet, walked to the table like he was walking through a dream. He sat down, his sons on one side, this woman he'd known for 3 days on the other. And for the first time since Catherine left, they ate a meal together. In peace. No one spoke, they just ate. But the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Full of something Richard couldn't name but could feel in every corner of his chest. When Lucas reached for his water and accidentally knocked it over, Richard expected chaos. Expected Liam to yell. Expected Finn to blame someone. Expected it all to fall apart. But Susanna just stood up, got a towel, and wiped it up. It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen. And Lucas smiled. Actually smiled. Richard watched his son's face light up, and something inside him shattered completely. This wasn't about rules or discipline or behavior management. This was about love. Real love. The kind that didn't quit when things got messy, the kind that stayed when staying was hard, the kind that saw 4 broken boys and said, "You're worth it." After lunch, the boys went to play, quietly, no fights, no screaming. Richard stayed at the table. Susanna started clearing dishes. "I don't understand," Richard finally said, his voice rough. "How did you do that?" Susanna paused, looked at him with those gentle eyes. "I didn't do anything, Mr. James. I just loved them. That's all they ever needed." Richard put his head in his hands. Because she was right. and he'd spent 3 years trying everything except that. 6 weeks passed. 6 weeks of Susanna waking early, making breakfast, humming her grandmother's songs. 6 weeks of small victories. Finn laughing at something on TV. Liam asking for help instead of breaking things. Logan spending less time hiding. Lucas going 2 whole days without screaming. Richard had started to believe, started to hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd turned a corner. Then May arrived. And with it, Mother's Day. Ads everywhere, stores full of cards and flowers, TV commercials showing happy families, mothers hugging children, children making breakfast in bed. Richard saw the shift immediately. Finn went quiet, stopped talking, just watched everything with hard eyes. Liam started breaking things again, small things, a cup, a toy, testing. Logan disappeared more, spent hours in places no one could reach him. Lucas's screaming came back, not as long, but sharp, painful. Richard tried to talk to Susanna about it. "They're regressing," he said, frustrated. "Everything we built is falling apart." Susanna was folding laundry. She paused, looked at him with patient eyes. "They're not regressing, Mr. James. They're remembering. There's a difference." "Remembering what? They don't even remember her. They were babies when she left. They remember what it feels like to have someone missing. That's a different kind of memory. It lives in the body, not the mind." Richard didn't understand, but he trusted her. Mother's Day morning came. Richard woke to silence, the bad kind, the kind that meant something was wrong. He got up, walked down the hall toward Susanna's room. The door was open, and inside was destruction. Her clothes scattered everywhere, thrown, torn, her bag emptied and dumped, and her Bible, her worn, precious Bible that she read every morning, ripped, pages torn out, scattered across the floor like snow. The 4 boys stood in the middle of it all, breathing hard, eyes wild. Finn had tears on his face. Liam's fists were bleeding from hitting the wall. Logan was shaking. Lucas was screaming, but this scream was different. This one was grief. "You'll leave," Finn was shouting at Susanna. "Just like she did. Everyone leaves." "We're bad," Liam yelled. "That's why she left. That's why everyone leaves." Richard moved forward to stop them, to protect Susanna, to punish his sons for this. But Susanna held up her hand, stopped him without a word. And then she did something that made Richard's heart stop. She sat down, right there on the floor, in the middle of all the destruction, in the middle of all the torn pages and scattered clothes and broken things. She didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't leave. She just sat. And then she started weeping with them. Not angry tears, sad tears, the kind that come from somewhere deep. "You're right," she said softly. "You're right to be angry. You're right not to trust." The boys froze. "Your mama leaving wasn't about you being bad," Susanna said, her voice breaking. "Sometimes grown-ups break, and when they break, children pay the price. But that wasn't your fault." Finn's legs gave out. He sank to the floor. "Then why did she go?" His voice was so small, so broken. "Why didn't she want us?" Susanna reached for him, pulled him close. "I don't know, baby. I don't know. But her leaving says everything about her pain and nothing about your worth." Lucas crawled into her lap, still crying. Then Logan came and sat beside her. Then Liam, his bleeding fists shaking, collapsed against her shoulder. All 4 boys, crying, finally, really crying. Not screaming, not raging, just crying like children who'd been holding it in for too long. Susanna held them, all of them, her arms around as many as she could reach. "I'm not leaving," she whispered. "Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. You hear me? Not ever." Richard stood in the doorway watching. He wanted to fix this, wanted to make it better, wanted to take their pain away. But he couldn't. Only she could, because she wasn't trying to fix them. She was just willing to sit in the pain with them until they were ready to stand up again. They stayed like that for a long time. Susanna and 4 boys on the floor, surrounded by torn pages and scattered things. Finally, Finn spoke. "We destroyed your Bible." "I know. Are you mad?" "No, sweetheart. I'm sad, but not at you." "We can't fix it," Logan whispered. Susanna smiled through her tears. Maybe we're not supposed to fix it. Maybe we're just supposed to pick up the pieces together and see what we can make from what's left. That afternoon, the boys helped clean up, carefully, quietly. They picked up every torn page, every scattered piece of clothing. When they were done, Finn looked at Susanna. "We're sorry. I know you are. And you're forgiven." Just like that? Just like that. That night, the boys didn't want to make Mother's Day cards. They said it hurt too much. So Susanna got out paper and markers and said, "Let's make something different. Let's make a poster about us, about who we are right now, about what makes us strong." And they did. Each boy wrote something, drew something, added something to the page. When they were done, Susanna added her own words at the bottom. "I'm grateful I found my way to 4 remarkable boys who taught me that love isn't about blood, it's about choice." They hung it on the refrigerator. And for the first time, Mother's Day didn't feel like a wound. It felt like a door opening to something new. Summer came quietly. The days got longer, warmer. The house felt different now, less like a battlefield, more like a place where people lived. Susanna was officially hired, not as a nanny, as family, though no one said it out loud yet. The boys were changing, slowly. The way healing always happens so gradual, you don't see it until you look back and realize how far you've come. Finn smiled more, still cautious, still the leader, but softer now. Liam's anger came less often. When it did, he'd find Susanna and she'd sit with him until it passed. Logan spent more time out of hiding, started talking more. His voice was quiet, but it was there. Lucas hadn't screamed in 3 weeks. Richard watched it all happen from the edges, grateful, amazed, but also lonely, because he could see something forming that he wasn't part of, a connection between Susanna and his sons that he didn't know how to enter. Late one night, after the boys were asleep, Richard found himself sitting in the kitchen, just sitting, staring at nothing. Susanna came in for water, saw him there. "Can't sleep?" she asked gently. "Never can, anymore." She poured 2 glasses, sat down across from him. The house was quiet around them. "They're doing better," Richard said, "because of you. They're doing better because they're ready to heal. I'm just here. It's more than that." Susanna was quiet for a moment, then she spoke softly. "Can I ask you something, Mr. James?" "Richard, please, just Richard." "Richard," she smiled slightly, "why do you stand so far away?" The question hit him hard. "What do you mean?" "With your sons, you watch them, you provide for them, but you stand at a distance, like you're afraid to get too close." Richard felt his throat tighten. "I don't know how to reach them the way you do." "You don't have to reach them my way. You just have to reach them." He looked down at his hands. "Every time I try, I see Catherine leaving. I see how much I failed, how I couldn't keep their mother here, couldn't give them a whole family. And I think, maybe they're better off without me trying." That's fear talking, not truth. Richard's eyes burned. "How do you do it? How do you love them so completely when you know what it's like to lose?" Susanna went very still. The silence stretched between them. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. 15 years ago, I had a daughter." Richard looked up. Her name was Joy. Susanna's eyes glistened. "She was 7 years old, the light of my entire world. And then she got sick. Leukemia. We fought it for 2 years. I sat by her bed every single night, prayed every prayer I knew, begged God to save her." A tear slid down her cheek. "She died on a Tuesday morning, holding my hand, and when she was gone, I didn't want to live anymore." Richard's chest ached. "I lost my job, lost my apartment, tried 3 times to end it. My sister found me the last time, got me help, took me to a little church where an old woman told me that sometimes God keeps us alive not for what we had, but for what we're meant to give." Susanna wiped her eyes. "I started cleaning houses, barely surviving, just moving through days. Then one Sunday, someone at church mentioned a family, a man with 4 sons. Everyone said those boys were impossible, broken beyond help." She looked at Richard, and something in me woke up. because I knew what it felt like to be called impossible, to be looked at like you're too damaged to save. And I thought, maybe God didn't save my joy so I could save myself. Maybe he kept me alive so I could help save yours. Richard couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I didn't come here despite my grief, Susanna said softly. I came here because of it, because I understand what it means to lose everything and still have to choose whether love is worth the risk. Richard's tears fell freely now. Does it get easier, the pain? No, Susanna said honestly. You just get stronger at carrying it, and sometimes, if you're blessed, you find people worth carrying it for. They sat in that kitchen, two broken people who'd lost so much, understanding each other in the quiet. Thank you, Richard whispered, for coming, for staying, for loving them when I didn't know how. You do know how, Susanna said gently. You're just afraid. But fear and love can't live in the same house forever. Eventually, you have to choose. Upstairs, Finn lay awake. He'd heard everything. And for the first time, he understood. They weren't broken. They were all just learning how to heal together. 6 months. Half a year since Susanna walked through that door. The house was different now. You could feel it the moment you stepped inside. Laughter lived in the corners. Peace settled in the quiet moments. Hope hung in the air like morning light. The boys were different too. Finn still led, but now he led with kindness instead of strategy. He'd started reading to Lucas at bedtime. Liam's anger had softened into passion. He'd taken up building things instead of breaking them, wooden boxes, small toys, things he made with his hands and gave away with pride. Logan came out of hiding, started talking about his dreams, said he wanted to be a pilot someday, wanted to fly high but always come home. And Lucas. Sweet Lucas hadn't screamed in months. He sang now, hummed Susanna's grandmother's songs while he played. Richard watched it all and felt something growing in his chest, something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. He was falling in love with her, with the woman who'd saved his sons, who'd walked into their grief and stayed, who'd chosen them when she didn't have to. But he didn't know what to do about it. Late one evening, after the boys were in bed, Richard sat with Mr. Whitmore in the study. I need to ask her to stay, Richard said quietly, permanently, not as an employee, as family. Whitmore smiled slightly. Took you long enough to realize it, sir. But what if I ruin everything? What if she says no? What if the boys... The boys chose her months ago, Whitmore interrupted gently. You're the one who's been afraid to catch up. Richard ran his hands through his hair. I'm twice divorced in my head every day. Catherine leaving broke something in me. What if I'm not enough? What if... Sir, Whitmore's voice was firm but kind. That woman didn't come here for enough. She came here for real. And real is messy and scared and imperfect. But it's also true. And truth is what your family needs. Richard nodded slowly. Talk to your sons first, Whitmore suggested. They deserve to be part of this decision. The next morning, Richard made pancakes, burned them slightly, but he tried. He called the boys to the kitchen. All 4 of them sat down, curious. Boys, I need to talk to you about something important. Finn's eyes sharpened. About Susanna? Richard's heart jumped. How did you? Dad, we're not blind. Finn almost smiled. Richard took a breath. I want to ask her to stay, forever, not as someone who works here, as part of our family. But I need to know how you feel about that first. Silence. Then Liam spoke. Like marry her? If she'd say yes, but only if you 4 are okay with it. Logan looked at his brothers. Can we talk? Just us? Richard nodded, watched his 4 sons huddle in the corner, whispering. His heart pounded. Everything depended on this moment. After what felt like forever, they came back. Finn stood in front, the leader, but his eyes were soft. Dad, we already decided. Decided what? We're keeping her. Finn smiled, really smiled. We decided months ago. We were just waiting for you to figure it out. Richard's laugh came out half sob. Are you serious? She chose us, Lucas said quietly. Even though she didn't have to. That makes her more our mum than the one who left. Richard's vision blurred. Liam stepped forward. She stayed through all our worst days. She sat on the floor with us when we were mean. She didn't leave when we broke her Bible. If that's not a mom, I don't know what is. Logan nodded. We want her to stay forever. We want to be a real family. Richard pulled all 4 boys into his arms, held them tight. Okay, he whispered. Okay, then let's do this right. Let's make sure she knows how much she means to all of us. The boys' faces lit up. Can we help plan it? Finn asked. I need you to help plan it. This is for all of us. They spent the afternoon scheming. The boys had ideas, good ones. Nothing fancy, Finn said. Susanna doesn't like fancy. The backyard, Liam suggested, where we planted the garden together. We cook her favorite dinner, Logan added. And I give her the flowers we grew, Lucas said softly, the ones we've been taking care of. Richard looked at his sons, these 4 boys who'd been so broken 6 months ago, now planning how to show love to the woman who'd taught them what love meant. When? Richard asked. Saturday, Finn said decisively. This Saturday, before we lose our nerve. They spent the week preparing, secretly. The boys could barely contain their excitement. Susanna noticed something was different, but didn't push, just smiled and let them have their secrets. Friday night, Richard stood in his bedroom holding a small box. Inside was a simple gold ring, nothing extravagant, just honest. On the band, he'd had 5 small stones placed, 1 for each of them. He opened the box, looked at it, and whispered a prayer. The first real prayer he'd said in years. Please, let this be right. Let her say yes. Let us become the family we're meant to be. Downstairs, the boys were in their room, equally nervous. What if she says no? Lucas worried. She won't, Finn said with confidence he almost believed. She loves us. She's been showing us that every single day. But what if Dad messes it up? Liam asked. They all laughed nervously. Then we fix it, Logan said simply. That's what families do. Saturday morning arrived. The boys were buzzing. Richard was terrified. Susanna came downstairs, and they all acted normal. Too normal. She definitely knew something was happening. That evening, as the sun started to set, the boys surrounded her. We made dinner, they announced. You have to come to the backyard. Susanna's eyes filled with tears before she even saw what they'd done, because she already knew. She was about to become exactly what she'd been all along. Home. The backyard glowed with string lights the boys had hung themselves. The table was set with her favorite things, simple food they'd learned to make together. The garden they'd planted months ago was blooming, full of color and life. Susanna's hand went to her chest. What is all this? Dinner, Lucas said, barely containing himself. For you. She sat down, tears already forming. The boys served her, each one bringing something they'd made, each one watching her face like it was the most important thing in the world. After they ate, Lucas stood up, walked to the garden, came back with flowers they'd been secretly tending for weeks. We grew these, he said softly, for you. Susanna took them, her hands shaking. They're beautiful. Just like you, Lucas whispered. Then Richard stood. His sons stood with him, all 5 of them in a line. Susanna looked at them, and she knew. She already knew. Susanna, Richard's voice broke immediately. He steadied himself, started again. 6 months ago, you walked into our lives when we were drowning. Finn stepped forward. You taught us we weren't broken. Liam next. You taught us that being angry was okay, but love was stronger. Logan. You taught us that people can stay. Lucas, his small voice clear and sure. You taught us what love really means. Richard's eyes were wet. You taught me that second chances aren't something you find. They're something you build. One day at a time, one choice at a time. He knelt down. His sons knelt with him. All 5 of them, on their knees, looking up at her. Susanna Taylor, Richard's voice shook. Would you build a life with us? Not as someone who helps, but as family, as the person who makes us whole. He opened the box. The simple ring caught the light. 5 stones, 1 for each of them. Susanna covered her mouth, tears streaming. I came here to survive, she whispered. I was barely alive. And you 5, you taught me how to live again. Is that a yes? Lucas asked, hopeful. Susanna laughed through her tears, nodded. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The boys jumped up, wrapped around her. Richard slid the ring on her finger with shaking hands. And there, in that backyard garden, surrounded by flowers and light and love, they became what they'd always been meant to be. A family. 1 year later, the same backyard, a photographer setting up. Okay, boys, let's get one good shot, the photographer said, smiling. The 4 boys stood together in matching shirts they'd actually picked out themselves. Susanna sat in front of them in a simple dress, glowing, Richard behind them, his hand on her shoulder. In Susanna's arms, a baby girl, 2 months old, dark hair, peaceful. What's her name? The photographer asked. Joy, Susanna said softly. Joy Catherine James. Richard squeezed her shoulder. They'd talked about it for months, naming their daughter after both the child Susanna lost and the woman who'd walked away, not to forget the pain. But to honor that broken things can still create something beautiful. Okay, everyone say cheese, the photographer called. Lucas grinned. Say family. They all laughed. The camera clicked. That photo would hang in the entryway, right where Catherine's portrait used to be, a new story written over the old one. Later that evening, after Joy was asleep and the boys were in bed, Richard and Susanna sat on the porch swing. The night was warm, quiet, full of peace. Do you think they're watching? Richard asked softly. Joy, your daughter, and Catherine. Susanna was quiet for a moment. I think broken hearts make the richest soil, and look what we grew. From inside, they could hear the boys laughing about something. Finn's voice, Liam's, Logan's, Lucas's. 4 voices that used to carry only pain now carrying joy. Susanna leaned her head on Richard's shoulder. You know what I learned? What? Love isn't about where you start. It's not about who left or who stayed or who got it right the first time. She looked up at him. It's about who you choose. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Richard kissed her forehead. I choose you. Every day. Forever. And I choose you. All 5 of you. Inside, baby Joy made a small sound. Not crying. Just letting them know she was there. Susanna smiled. I should go check on her. I'll come with you. They walked inside together. Into the house that used to be a graveyard. That was now a home. Where 4 boys who thought they were too broken to love had learned they were exactly the right amount of whole. Where a man who'd lost everything found out that sometimes what we need most is disguised as what we think we can't handle. Where a woman who'd buried her daughter learned that hearts can hold more than one kind of love. Where a family wasn't born, it was chosen. And sometimes, the most beautiful things in life are the ones we build from the pieces of what broke us. That night, the James house was full. Full of laughter, full of peace, full of second chances and new beginnings. Full of the kind of love that only God could plant in the wreckage. And watching over it all, maybe somewhere in the space between heaven and earth, 2 women smiled. One who'd left, one who'd gone home, both knowing that sometimes the greatest gift we give is the space we leave for love to grow. The porch light stayed on. The house breathed easy, and 5 hearts that had been shattered learned what it meant to be whole. Not perfect, just loved. And that was enough. That was everything.